What I'm finding is when you can restructure that to a commitment to healing, a commitment to heart-based awareness and walking this path of self-sovereignty and like skipping off the samsara wheel, right? Like, no, we're not coming back. We're not doing this again. We are the pattern interrupt, and knowing how to pattern recognize and then knowing how to pattern interrupt and using those two together like little traction points crawling their way through this mess. So there's two elements happening right now. Pull out the alien card and the false alien invasion. You know that they're really close to their plan being fully...
This is Off Planet Radio.
The following is a recording of a vintage tape marked Spring 1980 with my original birth first name. And on the opposite side, it says GOAT application in my mother's handwriting, and then MS for her initials. And then there's a larger black Sharpie line over this. It is a pink magnetic cassette tape marked Ampex for the maker of the magnetic cassette tape. On it, it describes on one side genetics experiments, splicing goat, rabbit, and human DNA, IgG, immunoglobulins, and washing them with fetal calf serum. On the opposite side, I have been coached and trained by one of my handlers, my biological father, with some songs that I learned at the Horace Mann preschool, which was held in the Andrew Carnegie building in New York City. This was, again, spring 1980. So I will begin with the genetics experimentation side.
We get it on the
Actually, this is the side with me.
Because then you don't get the sound properly. Just sing out loud there now.
Will also be carried out if possible.
The prior
on sales
recording cut
million,
out because the tape skipped out of the track. This is an old magnetic cassette tape. It is degrading in quality, which is why I'm transferring to digital at this time. This continues on. There's some of me in the beginning that I will go through. This is a little bit of programming that was done, corrections to what seemed like a child's game, and then I will switch over to the genetics component.
You can sing it nice and clearly so that it goes on the tape, okay? Sing it very clearly. Okay, sing it nice.
Now I know my ABC. Next time won't you sing with me?
Okay. Now what about that one? Love is something.
Love is something that you give it away. Give it away. Give it away. Love is something that you give it away. You end up having more. It's just like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many. La la, open up four. Now to give it all. Da-dum, 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 dum, 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 dum. I can't be singing it out on the tape recorder.
Okay, we'll hear it in a minute. What other songs do we know?
Jingle Bells.
Jingle Bells? Oh.
Okay, and now I'm going to switch it over to the other side of the tape to hear the genetics experimentation dictation.
The chromatograft through the Staphylococcus aureus column in order to remove intact Ig molecules. The FAB'2 fragment of IgG will pass through the column using a PBS wash, while intact IgG molecules and certain FC fragments will bind to the column and will only be eluted under acid conditions. FAB'2 material, thus isolated, will be checked again for antibody activity using octolony plates. In carrying out immunofluorescence studies, it has been found best to culture cells for 48 hours after trypsinization. Cells are then scraped from the surface of the culture flask, washed 3 times in serum-free medium. They are treated with first antibody, FAB'2 portion as described above, washed several times in serum-free medium, then treated with second antibody, namely fluorescein conjugated goat anti-rabbit antiserum. Following a further 3 washes with serum-free medium, cells are mounted in glycerol PBS 9:1 and examined by fluorescence microscopy. In each experiment, several controls are used. These include parent cells, namely RAG cells, parent lymphoid lines. Hybrid cells are then treated also with only second body and are examined. Fluorescence will also be carried out, if possible, on cells grown in serum-free medium and cells grown in medium containing immunoglobulin-free fetal calf serum to ensure that immunoglobulins detected on cell surfaces do not represent immunoglobulins absorbed from fetal calf serum. Furthermore, antisera used for fluorescence experiments will be absorbed so that they do not have cross-reactivity with fetal calf serum. Limitations and pitfalls. Surface immunofluorescence using the double antibody technique is a very sensitive method to detect surface immunofluorescence.
I would say that the pitfalls of splicing rabbit, goat, and human DNA and their impacts on the human immune system are now being evidenced in this post-pandemic world. This recording today was made for the exposure of the eugenics testimony and the link backs from the recent COVID pandemic into very long ago planned 1980 experimentation linking human animal hybridization, link backs into the immune system and immunoglobulin chains through DNA splicing, and furthermore evidence of its links through my prior singing of the tradition of mind control programming of children, use of children in these eugenics experiments because my blood was taken without consent to use as a control in this due to my genetic blood disorder, and also my use in the Horace Mann Carnegie building and the child sex abuse ritual that was performed there, and its links obviously into the power elite through the Carnegie name, and the exposure of that happened in 2012 with that abuse really just falling on completely deaf ears. This recording was made for the highest and divine expression in this moment to expose the eugenics agenda link backs into the power elite, and sex abuse, use of children, and our genetic architecture to anchor this into the existing hologram. Please record this as testimony to the IFWC Interdimensional Free World Councils for the project of human and planetary liberation at this time. And so it is lovingly decreed. Please anchor, lock, and seal in this hologram, sealing it into the light of wholeness, oneness, unity, and truth. And so it is. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Weird Shit We Talk About here on Off Planet Radio. I'm Randy Moggins. And our guest today is Artemesia, a generational subject of eugenics and MKUltra mind control programs since childhood. And the clips you just heard were recordings made when she was a small child with her father. And those were training exercises for eugenics and training children. Now, the point of Weird Shit We Talk About is this is not a traditional interview. Rather, these are spontaneous conversations that get recorded, always with permission of the subjects, obviously. And Artemesia sat down with me for an extended conversation after having gone public. And we just decided to record whatever the conversation was and where it went to grab the vibrational harmonics of the flow between us. A lot of the conversation here may lack context, except that the context is the conversation itself. The conversation is about two people talking about healing, talking about even future trends that are now currently erupting, the UAPs, /drones, /orbs that are appearing on the East Coast and actually all over the world. And this comes up in the context of this conversation as well. So we will begin the conversation part of this immediately following my narrative here, and that narrative begins with me discussing having gone into the hospital with breathing problems, being strapped down onto a table for an EKG and blowing the EKG machine out. And then I guess what you would call a psychotic break on my part, which wound up getting me locked down for 24 hours observation inside of the hospital, which is related and affiliated to a major university here in Pennsylvania. Use the inference for what it's worth. So we will continue with this, picking up the conversation right here, talking about being taken into a hospital as someone who has been part of a project.
Particularly the big cities, but if you go into an emergency room at a big city hospital, ones that are associated with universities are particularly worrisome because they are research hospitals, so they will get you to sign things saying that you agree to research. Then a cult person will pick up that you're probably MK when you come in the ER based on your presentation and things you say. I mean, I sent you the document of when they put me on detention. I went in saying I am being psychically driven. I am a mind control survivor. And they're like, oh, that's useful. Thanks for telling us who you are. So they held me for the first 3 days, first 15 hours shackled to the bed until I split. And then they worked me for 3 days, and then they placed me in I was transferred to 2 other facilities briefly, and then placed in a holding tank, larger facility for 3 weeks, and heavily medicated. Really, and I got a lot of the memory. Oh yeah. So I've recovered a lot of that memory. I mean, they fully worked all the parts. They figured out who, and so Allison Miller is pointing out that many survivors have come forward with this, and she made it public in her book. But if you are a survivor and you go in having a mental health crisis, this was why Duncan was so right to be so scared of when he parked out front. This was one of your shows with him. He talked about losing it and being parked out front, and he's like, no, I can't go in. And one of his parts knew that was a danger. They're literally picking you up and reworking you and then putting you back out, highly medicated, and shut down again. Because what I'm finding as I do my own deprogramming is that as you are able to wake yourself up and reintegrate these parts and internally restructure the compartments because the compartments will be there. Okay. There can only be 8, they found out. 8 is enough. You know, that TV show? Okay. So 8 is enough. They can't break you into more than 8 compartments, but within those 8 compartments, there can be multiples and they will stack them. So if you had the same series of programming happen at 3, age 9, age 12, and those are number cues, and your cues will come up. So if you're seeing repeating numbers, that's that, because you're internally cueing yourself. You're seeing it, and it will show up like a shining eyes, like they will pick that up, your internals. So restructuring that, and what they're trying to do is shut that down, because what I'm finding is when you can restructure that to a commitment to healing, a commitment to heart-based awareness and walking this path of self-sovereignty and like skipping off the samsara wheel, right? Like, no, we're not coming back. We're not doing this again. The dimensional stacking and the ability to see through the layers of not only like you're driving around and you see ads and what ads catch your eye or what colors and number sequences they're using, but that is going to be the veil, right? And then if you're picking up on that, depending on which ones of your internals are able to do that, you're going to be able to see through the other layers, because the astral beings that are, you know, some of them are just discarnates who want help. Some of them are positive ETs. Some of them are the really, you know, shag nasties that we know
astral
all too well.
Or lower astral.
Yeah, lower, you know, but it goes into 4D, 5D, and I've even had some stuff that I think is even higher dimension. The higher dimensional stuff is usually very beneficial and nature spirits, but you do have to be a little careful with poise with them, okay, because they don't want to deal with you. But if they know that you're able to pick up on them, they're like, okay, well, obviously she's done some work to figure this out. So when you can pick up on that, if you're just having casual interactions, say like with people at the store, or you're waiting in line for someone and someone comes up to engage with you, like I try not to engage, but if they come to me, they're picking up on something with me that they have information for me, or they're going to try and access me or trigger me. And so then I just hold neutral, and I'm able to walk in. This is what Duncan was talking about, being able to walk in 2 worlds and understanding that weird interplay. And this is why I have to just lay low and not go out a lot, because, you know,
that's
getting all the internals being like, okay, battle armor, we are going to the grocery store today. God damn it.
Honestly, that's probably one of my biggest trigger points, is having to go to the grocery store. And big stores totally freak me out.
Oh, yeah. No, and the fluorescent lighting. No. Yeah. Because that's where the thems can, any of that weird frequency lighting is a problem. Like, I try and shop at farm stands because they don't have that, or outdoor places, or small businesses, or cash only, you know, and sometimes it's unavoidable and you have to do the big stuff, and it's horrible.
It is. Yeah. So you mentioned Allison Miller. What was that book again?
It's called Becoming Yourself. Healing from mind control and ritual abuse, and it's available actually as a digital download on Amazon for like, you know, the hardback is like $75, but the digital download, you get it for a month for like $25, and that's what I did. I found it really useful. Personally, I can't listen to any other survivor's testimony, partly because my internals want to keep the field clear, because I need to believe myself when I have stuff, not think I'm cross-referencing. But she had some very structural techniques that I found very useful. And then at some point I was like, okay, I've got what I need out of this. I'm out, you know? And I just take, you know, a few threads.
Why are these books so expensive?
Right. I mean, why are the therapist that I saw, when I first saw him, it was $600 and that was in 2012. And this summer I had a 1-hour session and it was $200. I mean, I have a problem with people who have worked so hard to help people heal, charging that amount of money from people. I mean,
That's ridiculous.
My income is less than several $1,000s a year for my personal disposable income. Like, how can you do that? But it is what it is right now. And
I am so lucky. I'm blessed. I found a great therapist that does EMDR.
oh, good. Is that helping the EMDR? Yay. Yay. Yay.
We did it on the sexual abuse side of things. Because I only had partial memory, and I still only have partial memory. But the sexual abuse thing was definitely ritual.
Yeah, through the Masons and your family's Masonic connection. Right. Yeah. And so that the compartments, anytime I see a structure being talked about in New Age stuff where they're doing geometries and colors together, just know that there's only one kind of agency that uses that, and that is the stuff you don't want to talk to. Right. So Brian described this. The 8 compartments will often have a color associated with it. Sexual stuff is usually red. The parts that are designed to make you crazy so that you act crazy so that you end up in a situation where they can access you again are pink. And then there will be yellow, green, orange, purple, blue. And how they put those in will be very individual, but almost across the board, red and pink. And then look at, if you know a color wheel, I know you do art, so you'll know this too, how those colors combine. Okay, so red and blue make purple. So they will stack a red part, a sexual abuse part, a purple part. For me, that's psychic stuff. Stack. And then they will get, a red and a blue psychic stuff. And then they will get the purple part who can see into the psychic dimensions. I haven't figured out what blue is. I think it's like emotional trauma or emotional sensitivities. So being able to read people in their gestures and stuff. And so they will stack those. So if you are queuing in, like you're around your house and like, for me, I organize stuff constantly. That's internals telling me what I need to see. And just honoring that they are trying to get a paper mirror pointing into the void of the front altars. So if I need everything to be purple, or if I'm going to be wearing certain clothes and other clothes I won't wear, then I know that that's where the stacking is. So what I've had to figure out is how to track myself and just be neutral and non-judgmental, and also have that tolerance for ambiguity, like what does this mean, or and then the more you're able to build internal trust, because all of the breakdown of trust between human beings that happens with the sexual stuff, or all of this programming and how it was done to us, has destroyed internal integrity with trusting yourself. So rebuilding internal trust and forgiving the parts that have been protectors who have maybe been doing internal punishments. Like if you're having a lot of breathing problems on one day, I can tell you that there's a part that was taught to do that, to punish you, because it doesn't want you to get into the parts that are trying to heal. They're using positive and negative feedback loops, right? And so restructuring how those loops work is the memory work. And you don't necessarily have to get like the whole relived screenplay back. I mean, sometimes you just will, and you have to just deal with those, and it's horrible and ugly and but other times you can kind of just fly over it and go, okay, we're dealing with this, and then you move it off stage. So the other key point I wanted to share with you is what Brian was able to teach me is moving the part that's up. So, iconic thing, I talk about the shaking, and I realized, oh my God, the shaking is when they were running the electricity through me, right?
I get that a lot, and my legs especially.
Yes, the legs, right? So when you're in that, there will be other internals who are like the helpers, and they're like, oh my God, get him out of it, get him out of it. If you can do that, okay. That was real then, but it's not real now. And then you ask that part, you have to ask permission. You say, can you please take him or her to an off stage area? Because if the part is up, you're going to feel everything that was done to that part. You're going to have the emotional content or the physical content or whatever. If you take it off stage and say, can we work on that off stage? And then you get your helpers back up to the front and say, what do I need right now? I need a cup of tea. I need lavender essential oil. I need to sit and do nothing. I need to do art, whatever the helpers are going to get that needs to be done in that moment. Then that can, oftentimes now in dreams, I'm so lucid that I will be able to do that harder work when front is offline. So the shaking, yeah. And how that goes, if you look in the Springmeyer stuff and the MK Ultra stuff coming out of Hewitt and Cameron, the way it would go is they start the electricity often hooked into the larger energy pathways. So in your hip flexors, there are some back behind your knees. There are some, sometimes they'll hook into genitals. For whatever reason, it's almost always lower body parts. And then I'll get this weird visual thing where my eyes will split and I can see two images. Do you have that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where your eyes kind of cross. So they would put a point in front of you and you would have to focus on that. And then they would look for when you got your nystagmus, and it's a diagonal nystagmus.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm going to stop now because it's too much. But I'm telling you some... wisdom.
That was triggering, but it was also useful. Yeah. I have.
So look for when that's happening and say, can I get that off stage? And then I put this here because I was going to show you this. I have made a bazillion compartments, okay? And these are my own compartments.
Describe this because I'm only doing audio.
Okay, so I make little jars and I paint them and I put corks on them, and then that's that compartment. And then this is like a stack of a chest of drawers of four.
Yeah.
Four things, and I have beads in them. Okay, someone gave me all these beads, and when I can't do anything else, I will take out a packet of beads and I will sort them, because it's about how, for me, that's just how they did it. Okay, they had me sort things into different things, and that's how they were. Exactly, right.
Yeah,
and the colors and
my bead bracelets. Yeah. We actually did this as therapy with my therapist.
To make that, yeah.
Beads, yeah.
Yeah.
Just randomly throwing out beads, and then that was part of a therapy session.
That's good. So anything that you're finding useful in your therapy, if you get to where you hit the stuck points, those are just the energy blocks of like you're heavily triggered, or the colors are like, or you find yourself getting that like you're starting to move really fast. Like, I've got to do the laundry, I've got to do the dishes, I've got to do this, I've got to sort, I've got to.
That's me. I got manic.
Yeah. So that's just a lot of parts coming up all at once. And that's when you ask your older internals to say, okay, it's like a preschool room full of crazy kids. You just got to be kind and be the loving, compassionate teacher. And you say, okay, everyone, we're getting a little too loud in the house.
Time out.
Yeah. And what would be a calming activity, and whatever that is for you. It's so individual. This is the problem. But I mean, there are techniques that I think are pretty well across the board, because that's how it was installed,
Yeah. I'm at the place in the therapy where I'm starting to talk with the therapist about mind control programs. Like, she's very open. She's very spiritual, and we have a great connection. But the last session, I explained to her, because she knows about my podcast. She just did a podcast with me on EMDR. And
Oh, cool.
she's only vaguely aware of, I asked her about satanic ritual abuse, and she said she was just vaguely aware of it. She works mostly with trauma cases with first responders, police, military, things like that, which could be concerning, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
There's a book for her. Allison Miller wrote a compendium book. It actually came out first, and it is a book for therapists on how to work specifically with mind control and ritual abuse survivors. And she goes in, I haven't looked at it. She recommends that survivors do not look at it. But she goes into very good detail on this internal structuring that they did and how it was done, and then like kind of more standard therapist techniques on how to begin to rebuild those connection pathways internally that are life affirming and life sustaining, instead of being, reporters to the handlers or call up the ones that are going to be the internal punishers. And it sounds like you're having a lot of problems with getting them on board with healing. I'm in the same spot, and just being really compassionate and slow. So I would recommend finding the title of that. I don't have it right now, but if you look up Allison Miller on Amazon, it's there. And that's what she needs to know, because it's hard as a survivor getting a therapist to believe that this is real. And it kind of needs to come from an outside verifiable source that this is real.
right.
It just does. That's just who they are.
Yeah, my sense is that she's not a handler. I don't get any vibes like that. She's extreme. I know her background. I can't help but think that dealing with first responders, she isn't encountering unknown, certain, we'll say, assets. That's probably a concern of mine. But I don't think she herself shows any guile. I scanned it, I've scoped it. We've gone through a tremendous amount of sharing. We're actually, have a friendship bond.
That's good.
I broached the subject of satanic ritual abuse in the context of the ritual side of my own sexual abuse. And she said, I'm only vaguely aware of it. So I probably am in a position to educate her more.
Does she know about the SMART ritual abuse site run by Neil Brick, or survivorship.org, where they have tons of articles on evidence of this? And so survivorship.org, they're based out of Marina Del Rey, which for me is and they do conferences every year. But
What is
they have
it again?
Survivorship.org, and all of their videos from the conferences are available on YouTube. You have to have a YouTube account in order to view them, though, because it's like age protected, and I refuse to give them my I don't let them in. I have no
choice.
Yeah, I know.
Person.
So, but she will she will be able to see that there. There's some really good stuff on someone did a presentation this year on Freemasonic art and evidence of ritual abuse in that. And then there's another really fascinating one someone who was looking at Carl Jung's work, which I don't know a therapist who doesn't like Jung, and realizing that some of his works and his, like, he wrote a novel and some other stuff, that Jung had ritual abuse experience in his own life from the Switzerland connection. And most therapists don't get that. So I would say if you're in the position of you need, as a survivor going into therapy, you have to pay them to be their teacher. It's so obnoxious because it's the classic reversal, right? So, but if you're in a position to educate her, that would be a place where it takes the pressure off of you and say, hi, you need to get your hamster wheel up to speed because you're gonna, right now, thousands of survivors are waking up. And when I talked to Brian Moss, it kind of floored me. I said, yeah, hundreds of thousands of people have been impacted by this. And I'm so worried about what's happening at UCI because they have access to so many kids there through this CART autism center. And it's I had to go. I don't want to go in the cart, right? Monty Python it for a moment of levity. And the reason people are waking up now is because there's a huge, the whole planetary shift of energy. But the therapists are going to be seeing us all come out of the woodwork right now because that's what needs to happen. And therapists have been really turning a blind eye to this. But when I said this to Brian, I said, there's, hundreds of thousands. He says, no, Annalee. In the United States alone, there are millions of people who have been controlled. Millions. And when he said that, it was like the moment when you find out how many people were murdered in the Holocaust. It's like, takes a minute, right? Like millions of people. And we're all coming online right now. And the question is which way are those going to go? Are they going to go the crazy spun out mass shooting, all the garbage that we're seeing on news that they're really high profiling, or are they going to go
sort
the
of like
route
Russ Dizdor's Dark Awakening?
Yeah. I mean,
I think we've been seeing it in very controlled torrents with these random shootings and the unleashing of the gangs into the United States as well.
Yeah. Those are all people who are being activated. Or all these rings with the trafficking rings.
Yeah. We know that it was a global operation, that the projects weren't, hardly limited to the United States at all.
Well, and what I've tracked is that there's certain centers where the mind control was really dense, and it was happening to a lot of people. Hang on, I'm just going to turn this fan off because it's kind of...
Yeah.
So South Africa is a big one, apartheid and that. And of course, my mother worked there, and then I was taken there and worked there, but more with the ritual abuse side of things. Switzerland, I was taken there. I've told you that when I was 4. And then, of course, Washington, D.C., stuff there is super dark. It's a lot of different agencies, NIH and the National Institutes of Mental Health, certainly, and the NIM, Secrets of NIM, Mrs. Frisbee, but Walter Reed. If you're looking at look at just a smattering of stuff on when... the
Menninger Institute is another one.
Yeah. When what's that really old Republican senator who did the froze on stage thing and then he fell off, and then so that guy, that's a dissociative programming breakdown if you look at his eyes when it happens. And then everything that you're seeing with Trump right now, he's being cued, and he's cueing people who might be following him in certain ways. So what we're seeing is the mind control coming out of the woodwork, and people aren't picking up on this. And even why I landed where I'm at, there's some weird stuff going on out here. But so there's places in the country, but anything in California, look at what's coming out of California right now. It's ridiculous. But California is on the 33rd parallel.
Yep.
So anything in that vicinity is, I tried at one point this past summer. There was a kid I was paired with in the way that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I know
this
that
summer, or I mean, when I was a kid. Wow, she just said this summer because it's so real for her. And he is the media guy who was known in the 90s during the Gulf War as like the good-looking war reporter for
I remember this guy.
CNN. Okay, his name is Ryan Chilcote.
Right.
And then he went to BBC. And now he has his own media company called 33 Productions. And he was put on stage before the Ukraine war began. He was put on stage with Putin, and he was one of the few people allowed to interview Putin. Okay, so that's the level. I'm like, when I saw that, because I pinged internally, I was like, look up what Chilcote's doing right now. That's the level that I was worked at. But see, the problem with me was that I didn't buy in, and they hated that. Because I was always layering in other stuff that wasn't their target. And so this is another piece that you might have to look into for yourself. Maybe you're not quite there yet. There are internals that you'll have that are what are called discards. And they are parts that they were trying to program to a certain set of specific actions or behaviors or ways to interface with the cult. And they chose not to follow the cues, or they layered in additional cues so that they would find that traction point of like, this isn't real, and wake themselves up and then derail their thing that they were going, their programming track, and put you back on track of your own heart-based awareness, your own integrity, your own authenticity, which has none of that. Right. And then if they picked up that was what was happening, those ones were horribly tortured and will be very shut down internally. And so where I'm at is trying to locate internally where these discards are, because they are really in need of help. And yet they have the most incredible powers of concentration and focus to have been, horribly tortured physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, and yet still keep the organic online. And so they have an incredible ability when I have to go out in the world, the ones that I have been able to self-rescue and get some internal help. They're on point with this compass of being able to be like, that is not a human being. That is someone who is an entity.
Yeah.
And I can see it, and we will go and walk away.
Yeah, I've experienced
you can
that
pick them
numerous
out.
times. Yeah.
Yeah. So those discards, that will be your hardest work for sure, because it's so bad.
So is there an ET connection to all of this?
Yeah. There's two things I've realized with that. One is, if you look in my book, if you still have those CD-ROMs, there's a story in there called...
I have them on PDFs.
So there's one called Arrival of an Anomaly. And it's a story of when I was out camping with my family in Utah along the Colorado River, and I had a night of what I felt was an ET encounter. What I understand about that now is that was a flashback, and it was overlaying with a present sense of reality. But there was also other people in the campground that were just passive cues, or I don't think they were. Anyway, in that, there's one line where, yeah, I don't think they were. But sometimes it all kind of weirdly plays in. But at one point in that piece of writing, I describe being approached. I was told to come out of my tent and sit down, and the beings were within few inches. And then I opened my eyes, real time, and I saw them all just vanish to a vanishing point in the center of the screen, like an old style TV. You know, when you turn it.
Cathode ray tube.
And that moment of traction for me came only this summer, Randy, and it was so powerful. And I went, oh my God. So vertical memory, which is a trauma memory, will be stored in the part of the brain that processes as present tense. And the weird thing is that I don't think that the handlers really wanted this, but it just is how our brains work, is that it will store sensory data exactly how it happened. And what did I see? It went to a point. What was I shown? I was shown a video on a screen, probably, on psychedelic drugs, probably heavily medicated, certainly split in trauma because of physical stuff. And they showed me a video of 4 aliens, and it went to a vanishing point. And I was like, this is staged. So there's 2 elements happening right now. And, if you look at what David Icke has brought out about, he had an insider who was Werner von Braun's PR person. And in Werner's communications with her, he said, when they pull out the alien card and the false alien invasion, that they're really close to their plan being fully worked through. So we're very close to this now. And why the UAP thing happened with Congress, and they wanted to float that out there to see what the reception was.
Even after 75 years renaming it to UAPs.
Right.
That's clearly a linguistic twist.
Yeah. That's NLP, right?
Yeah, that's creating a new scenario, controlled opposition.
Uh-huh. And probably there's a lot of people who were MKs who have the UAP as an internal code. So I usually break that down with what letter does U correspond to? What does A is 1? And then P is this letter. And then that would be a number code. And then that would call up different ones. Okay, so that's part of why they do that. But so there's 2 things happening. There's one, the agenda, the cult, and them pushing that. There is also something else. And, just yesterday, so since doing this interview, I've had to do a lot of going outside my comfort zone and leaving the house and doing some things to make sure that I have my own invisible web of protection out. And when I went out to go do one of those just yesterday or Wednesday, I saw a lenticular cloud, which only form over a very high elevation deformity, right. Usually a landmass. You usually see them over Mount Rainier. And I saw a lenticular cloud forming over a completely flat area over Bremerton, where the nuclear sub base is, and where I have tracked that there's a known UFO alien cult there, with the head of that being this new age woo-woo lady. She used to work for the Navy Environmental Sciences Group, and now she's this new age cult leader, and they have a school attached with kids. I mean, it's the nightmare, right? So, and that lenticular cloud formed over there. Same day before, Navy airplane used in the zappers, which is the communications frequency relay division of the Navy, flying out of Whidbey Island, also near here, crashed in Rainier.
Whoa.
Known alien base, and I've been called out there, and I don't know what the hell happened, but I have a lot of personal experience out there. And they crash, and they have found the crash site from above, from aerials. They cannot get a crew in, and they cannot locate the people who were on. Okay, so that all happened this week. So we're very close to something. There are benevolent ETs, and you cannot trust anyone.
Absolutely.
You just have to be this very Aikido, let that energy go where it is going, and witness, and don't attach, and be neutral, and always be kind, and hold your boundaries, and avoid, and you just have to be this very watery, gauzy. But there have been times when I know that I am in the astral, and I am also 3D physical body, and there are beings in the astral that pick up on me. I showed up to drop off a bunch of my personal clothes at a weird place called the Angel Guild. And when I showed up, I kind of hit the curb, which I'm a very careful driver, and I like bumped into myself, parking. And just then this huge gust of wind blew up, and there's this type of shrub that grows here called a smoke bush. I mean, go burning bush Bible on this, this time of year it has these fluffy seed pods.
Oh, yeah.
And the wind hit it, and all this like smoke bush seed like went up in like a whirling, whirlwind. And I was like, yay, we are officially on the other dimension right now.
Wow.
So, and then I just, the part that always learned how to be a good actor and that was always like, keep it fun, keep it light, even though you're in the absolute shit of it, and keep them laughing and make it funny and fun and stupid and crazy. This is the crazy part. Like, just play it. You're on stage. What is the Bard's line? All the world's a stage.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just do that, and it's it seems to be getting me through, and it's hard, and it's doable.
It's real fucking hard.
It's real fucking hard.
I am in the depths of it right now.
Do you have people who are close to you who are now not in a physical body who can help you on the other side of the veil? Like you mentioned years ago that your mother-in-law passed away, or other people that you love and have
My grandmother. Who comes to me in dream time. Mm-hmm. This was really weird. I had these dreams. They were like a series. Like, it wasn't just one random dream. It played out over weeks, maybe even a month, where my grandmother is sitting in her old house. Mm-hmm. And me now is being told to go see my grandmother, and I'm going, that's absurd. She's been dead for 35 years. But then I'm seeing her, and she's sitting at her kitchen table, just like she always was, smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee, looking out the window. In this dream, I kept getting closer and closer to her. And at the same time, I'm like fearful because I don't want to expose myself because I feel dirty. Mm-hmm. I feel like I disappointed her. Mm-hmm. And eventually I did get closer to her. I did finally connect with her. And when I connected with her, the dream stopped, but I internalized. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Those lucid moments are real interactions on the other dimension. You know that, right?
Yeah. See, my grandmother was really my advocate when I was being molested.
Mm-hmm. She knew, right? And she was trying to help you.
Well, it was, the molester was, first off, he was part of one of the Masonic lodges in a very small town that had 3 Masonic lodges.
Whoa.
4,000 people. Mm. He was part of those lodges. My father, my mother, my aunts, uncles, and grandparents were all lodgers. And this guy was part of that. He was also my grandparents' neighbor. He groomed me in front of them. Mm. And so when this finally came out, when I broke down, because I completely broke down, the way this was handled was my dad and my uncles went and paid him a visit, and then it was never talked about again. It was swept under the carpet. And my grandmother was the one who, without saying anything supported me. She had the sense of what I went through, to the point where she spoiled me, which pissed my parents off.
So what I'm seeing with your video and hearing with you, and this is how I track myself, the breathing problem is related to that. And the specific cues you gave were sweep under the rug. So maybe some activities about taking rugs and pulling things out from them, or putting dirt under them and then lifting the rug and pulling it out might help that part. And then shower that part with all the beautiful things, exactly the things that your grandmother did to support that part. So whether it was, baking it cookies, or, making it a special blanket, or whatever she did, exact. I mean, it won't be the same thing, but as close as you can get, do that. So, and what you're going to do in doing that for yourself, you have to rebuild your own internal parents, the ones who will take care of you, the ones who will give you good guidance, the ones who will love you unconditionally. And so when you can do that and maybe use these other models that those internals desperately needed at the time, and you're going to have to tease this out, right? So the way you do that, and I don't mean like a mean teasing it out, I mean draw it out because it feels the same energy current, right?
Yeah, gently. Yeah.
Right. So those are some things what I'm hearing. And then understanding that I could see your breathing shift when you began into the dream sequence. Your breathing stuff is heavily tied into that specific part. Probably because it felt like you were suffocating when this was happening.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah. And I am so deeply sorry, Randy. I mean, I know it wasn't my fault, but just as a human connection, I know how hard that is. And I have felt that same pain because it has happened to me. And I can tell you there is a way through. Be your own parent and work your tools to heal that, because it can be healed. And when you are able to get that little boy to where he feels like he knows it's not happening now and he can begin to grow again, the growth of your whole self now is going to be like this trebuchet of energy. And that is what I have had to move through recently with doing this interview. I went into that interview and I had gotten like 6 hours of sleep in 4 days. Richard told me on Monday that we were going to do it. I heard from him out of nowhere. I had sent a message to the Iconic like weeks ago, and then I heard from him on a Monday, and we were going to do the show on Friday. And those days leading up, I had to do so much work to settle down the protectors and practice, But since then, like finally having some people who, the comment feed on that was like, they're actually like nice to me and they believe me and they're like, I'm so sorry. Like having that was like the flow that I needed to and just trebuchet like over the net, right? So the negative ET and the cult have this net. It's a frequency fence, and as soon as you hit it, you get that shaking, that vibration.
I know what it is. Yes.
Yeah. So you just need to hit escape velocity to punch through that. And for me, I punch through it as many places as I can, all simultaneously. And I realize when I do that I have been building the tools that I needed for that exact moment all at once. And you have to wait for it. It comes on divine timing. It's not on your timing, and you will know when it's there. For me, I look into the astrological stuff. Stephen Forrest and his evolutionary astrology has been very helpful for me on that, because it's about free will choice within the larger cosmic arena. and how to work those existing energy lines to your own evolutionary advantage. And when you can get these very wounded internal parts to where you've caught them in the safety net of the present, and you go, yes, it's real. Yes, we believe you. Yes, the muck pile under the rug is out, and we have swept it out of our backyard, and it is no longer here, and it will not touch you, and I will not let it hurt you, and I will not let it happen again. And you've showered it with the love that it needs, then it will begin to grow. And those are the ones that are most wounded in your system, internal system, are the ones who have the most incredible powers of regeneration that are desperately needed on Earth at this time, because you have very unique wisdom. Those parts have very unique wisdom seen through the eyes of a child, with that wonder and excitement and joy that only children really seem to have anymore. That will be able to put the living system of Earth, the organic flows outside of the controller force net, back online to a life affirming, not the death cult, not the, and so that's why the healing, if I can share with you one thing I've learned in this, the healing is important for you, just so that you can get through this and you can escape to freedom whenever the body passes.
Yes.
But in terms of the last piece of the mission on Earth and why it was worth the risk to come here during this incredibly chaotic time, is that those parts who have been locked away have exactly the medicine that is needed to bring our beloved planet Earth back online as a living system. And that is why some of us were sent here into these families where it was known before incarnation that we would face this, because when the time was ripe and it was clear that the agenda was going to advance to the next level of total archontic control, we would be able to self-rescue those parts, find the path and the map to where we would find our own freedom and our own liberation on an internal choice-based level, and also leave a template of how it would be possible to do that. Because some people will get stuck here, and some people will choose to come back to Earth, and some people will have to fight this battle that you and I know all too well under great personal cost. And if we can leave a template, it's an energetic template. It's not necessarily a physical thing.
No, I get that. And where you're going is exactly where I'm going. Yeah. I want to be free enough to do what I got to do. And I know what that is. It's what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But look how I was taken out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been over 2 years of physically, emotionally, mentally, relationships, finances, the whole thing has tried to take me down. So I'm in this place where I'm balancing everything. I'm juggling to get back up and dust myself off and move again.
Yeah, I know that. Because in 2013, I mean, I got picked up and I got worked for 3 days very heavily. And then I lost 5 years. I spent 5 years from there trying to get off the meds, trying to play the system of therapists and yada, yada, get a job, be a mom, and that served some purposes. But it was clear that with what our group tried to do in 2012, they took out Chris first. And this is my Chris crystal. One went to Miranda as payment for being allowed to attend the seminar in Sacramento. One I sent to Chris as a gift, and I kept the middle one. And so whenever I do this work, I hold on to this because Chris has been helpful for me guiding from the other side. And they took out Chris, and then they broke apart Duncan and Miranda, and Duncan got placed with a new handler. and just spun out on his addictions.
Yes.
And I don't know where Miranda is. I've tried to find Sarah. She got picked back up into the legal stuff in
That's
like
Sarah
working.
Stanga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's working for some legal attorney in England out of London. It's real bad. I can't get in touch with her directly, but I've tracked her down to
Well,
there.
I was directly told by Miranda on the telephone, and I broke down in tears, that I absolutely was not allowed, she was not allowed, nor was I allowed to contact each other ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they took me out with the hospitalization that happened in 2013. And Miranda had told me on a phone call and in an email, I had that taped in a book, and I looked at it and went, okay. And that was one of the traction points where I was able to start to put together what happened in the hospital and believe myself on that, because I had been getting bleed through flashbacks. And then you hung on for dear life for many years past what any of us were able to do. And then they finally found you. But it's being rebuilt in terms of a much larger, like I said, millions of survivors all over this country, and certainly all over the world. But I do think that there is a way through, and it's
so maybe this is a reverse of dark awakening, and it's light awakening. In other words, what was meant for evil is going to be used for good.
Yeah. And it's why we were willing to endure and lay low and, fight like hell and talk about it, and then go underneath and hide under a blanket for as long as needed. And because what the programmers didn't realize was, and here's my weird tie-in with this. Okay, so you mentioned years ago when Stranger Things first came out and how that was kind of giving some weird. So right now, Stranger Things season 5, I haven't been able to watch past the first season. I was like, I know how this goes. I don't want to play that game.
That's kind of been me too.
But my husband used to work in New Mexico on the movies, and all of his friends, people we have direct line contact with. I don't have contact with them. He's kind of, once in a while. They are all working as grips on the set of Stranger Things 5. And there are times when I'm like, that scene where 11 has to go into the astral after being, in the pool with the EEG hooked up to her head, and she finds the creepy gross thing that creates the upside down, and she's forced to make contact with it. And then later on, she seals up the hole in the portal because she was the one who opened it, and she feels this, guilt. Got to throw the guilt out because that belongs on someone else, right? But what the thems didn't count on was that when they threw us into that, they were giving us access to understand how the Archontai system works. And so in terms
Explain.
the Archon,
okay.
the Archontai is how the Cathars would say it, but the Gnostic folks, and so it's sort of like, I see your Star Trek thing in the background there. I'll say, so this is the 6 of 9 who was Borg and now she's not, and she offers really useful information to the Trek crew because she knows how they think and she understands some of the weird things of the programming systems and stuff. So once you can understand your own system and rebuild that and move the files around and get it working to life affirming and committed to healing, and then you can see the Archontic system for what it is and know that your system is not plugged into that, or it can interface. You're so computer oriented, so I'm going to try and shift this to language that part will really get. When you can interface with an alien programming system, but keep your own mainframe and your own trajectory and your own anchor point into living life systems, which has to go through this earth because she's much bigger than us, much bigger consciousness, much bigger history, and she is moving through, the galaxy and the Milky Way and these Kordaluski clouds. I don't know if you're looking into the Kordaluski clouds that they're talking about right now with the nanotech in them, and moving through that field. So hook into the earth, be like the little opossum hiding on the mother planet, like moving through this really big thing. But you know how the other nano gross stuff works, and yet you stay with your integrity intact. And so it allows you this interface. It's like Lilu, the fifth element, and she's like, multipass. I have a multipass. like value your own multipass of stupid, horrible shit that you had to go through to qualify to have the multipass. And then when you do have to go to the big grocery store and the fluorescent lights and navigate the thems that are plugged into the, people who are so clueless that they haven't even ever tied their shoes.
Consumers.
Yeah. The consumers who are consumed. Then it's kind of useful because they don't know you have a multipass. and work your blendy-any that you've been able to forge out of the freak show that we are, and work your blendy-any. But then when you need to pull out the Jedi mind trick, do it, and be fun about it. That's where the internal kids can just be really awesome. Or I try and use pop culture references, because if no one understands the esoteric has already been woven into the pop culture so effectively.
Yes.
That I can pull those out without. So I had to go, an example of that is I had to go to this place the other day. It was a farm stand, but I knew that I was going to hit the weird there, but I still had to go there. And so these guys the guys who own it were just kind of jacktards, but whatever, I was playing with it. And then I used the line from the Indiana Jones stuff. And I was like, oh, because there was this Templar energy, right? And it was like, oh, shit. And I was like, oh, I'm going to pull out the Indiana Jones. And I put my finger up like this. And then I went, choose, but choose wisely. And then he picks the melon that I'm going to buy because, he won't let you touch the melons. You have to. And so then I used their own medicine, because everything is medicine, including you. So if you're going to be the intervention and inoculate the Archontai system with the life force, occasionally you have to use the antidote poison that they've already cued into you and that they will cue off of, and you put it right back in. And so that's where I started to use proton mail, partly because Brian suggested it, and I was like, I don't know, I don't want to go this route. They're based in Switzerland, they're coming out of CERN, I don't like anything that's happening there. And I was like, no, this is it. That's where they're doing the Hadron Collider. That's where they've got Shiva and the shadow of Shiva on the building. So I'll use proton mail, and then that's my in to that system. And it's a very indirect, and it's just woo-woo. And yeah, you super wooed me my whole life. So I will super woo when I need to. You know what I mean? And I just medicine and inoculate. It's very silly, but I think it's working.
Well, silly's good because it brings levity into it. And at the same time, it's the court jester that gets to make fun of the king. Right. So I have a weird thing that I'm going to ask you some questions, or maybe just hold it in neutral awareness. So where I'm at right now in terms of physical geographical location is I'm sandwiched in between the Bremerton
and the naval base and the nuclear shipyards there. And then this town, teeny tiny town, like you said, there's like 3,000 people and it has 3 Masonic lodges or 2 and a Native American reservation. And Bill Gates and his number 2 guy, Jeff Rakes, Bill Gates has property on one side, and then there's this resort that my husband works at as a caterer. He's the head of banquets, and then Jeff Rakes on the other side. So, periodically my husband has to make food for Jeff Rakes. He's met him several times. My husband did like a $300,000 wedding, and one of the guests showed up to the marina in a 4-decker super yacht, and Bill Gates launched his helicopter from the golf course and flew over the super yacht. Okay, so, and the Masonic connection, and I had a weird run-in with some of those people, and I was invited to the oldest Masonic historical house of the guy who founded this area. And there was this amazing tree.
The Black Lodge.
Yeah, the one that no one knows is a lodge, but it is. And they're trying to restore it and get some money. And I was invited to do a sales pitch meeting there for my apothecary stuff. And I was like, this is weird. And of course they didn't end up buying anything. The lady who I pitched to drove by my house and picked up something for a gift for her boyfriend's mother once, and she's like, "Oh, drive through apothecary." But the funny thing was I had given them a bunch of free samples at Christmas last year just as a gift out of nowhere, and it was mostly undercarriage care butt salve, right? And we don't need to go into why I needed to figure out that medicine for myself. But and so then they had in this Masonic lodge in the bathroom with the checkered floor, that they had done in the corner in a bookshelf a lot like this one. We had all my little tins of salve, these little hockey pucks. And I was like, oh my God. I totally faked myself out with oh, my business isn't going to work. I'm going to give them this stuff and I'm going to try and generate some sales. And no. It had nothing to do with any of that. It had to do with something. And so that's where trusting in the absurd things, there were things that you and I were asked to do when being groomed that didn't make sense, but we went along with it because we knew the consequence, and we probably don't understand still what that was all about. But those parts that knew how to just be just play along. There's a plan here, and it doesn't have to make sense to, you're on a need to know basis and you don't need to know. And when you do need to know, you'll put it together. And I still do some of those weird things, because later on when I figure it out, I'm like, oh my God, that was brilliant. And I never would have thought of it if I had known. So yeah, I got butt zapped into the Masonic lodge.
Oh my, that's rich.
Yeah. That's my moment from the Will Smith Aliens movie, Independence Day, where the crazy Randy Quaid guy is oh, yours. Oh, but I'm crying right now because I know what it took to be.
I know. I see the tears.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. Do you have that where you'll just start purging out of one eye? It'll just water?
Yeah, I don't cry very often.
Yeah.
I have trouble.
But do your eyes
that.
water unexpectedly? Yeah, that's it. That's it coming out. And I'm okay with it not being the big show with lots of tissues involved. I have those too.
Yeah, I have them in private.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I try to have them in private, but it's hard. And, my husband is not awake and he doesn't, I couldn't even tell him that I did this radio show. He just knew that I lost my shit for a week and and that the dishes weren't going to get done on time, and then I kind of put it back together. But in some ways, I have another friend in the area who's been helpful, and she's a magic person. And I was like, I just can't figure out why I'm in this place and why I'm still with my husband and why the Bill Gates thing. I mean, because at the core of the mind control and transhumanism and the eugenics stuff, which is where I really have my interest right now, is that because I can speak to that personally. And she said to me, I just out of nowhere, she has these things. She said to me, "You're there because they could get you in close." And I was like, well, maybe this is like the reverse of the possum, is that I'm like the flea on the dog's back. And, like the money we have for food comes from my husband's salary, which is directly coming from Jeff Rake's number 2 of Bill Gates. And it's like, that's a rather uncomfortably close.
Yeah.
But I mean, what else am I going to do? I just have to play it out.
So what were you going to ask me?
What do you think about that, being that close to to that level?
I don't think about it.
Yeah.
I mostly spent so much time denying it that now I'm just dealing with the fallout and the reality. The reality that there's a gift in all of this.
Mm.
I spent 35 years of so-called normal life denying everything, burying everything. As nearly as I can tell, I was used into my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became resistant. I became not an asset anymore, but a liability.
Mm-hmm. And the discards.
The discard. So then I had a quote normal life after I had a breakdown. I've had like 4 separate breakdowns in my life where I just became non-functional.
The goo. Yeah, the goo and the chrysalis being rebuilt, right?
And so now, in what I'll just call the last years of my life on this world, I only have 2 goals left. Well, 3. I want to get free of these influences. I want to put out the message that I was given, and when I leave here, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Like I am done with
Castaneda
this.
says to dart past the eagle to be free, right?
There's other realms, and I think I've earned my right to matriculate into the higher realms.
I know you get there because I have a part that's already there that I hear from, and I already saw you there.
That's a relief.
Yeah. And when I saw you there in 2013 when they were working me really hard. And I already knew you were there, and I knew I was going to be there, and that's how that part was able to pull through that. And most of our other crew gets there too. And I mean, Corso, Duncan, Miranda, Sarah, Chris, you, I, and that group coming together as informal and like ragtag monkey wrench gang as we were was actually pretty potent, and that's why they've invested. Think of how much energy they have invested in taking us out one by one. What a waste of energy of theirs.
I know.
Right?
I know. And here I was at the epicenter of it all.
Have you heard from Duncan?
No. Duncan and I don't have a relationship anymore.
Mm-hmm. Duncan doesn't have a relationship with himself, unfortunately.
No.
I contacted him 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was clear he was scrambled egg.
My last contact with Duncan was personally in Houston when I hosted a conference down there, and it did not go well at all.
Mm.
There were all kinds of people there, and there was all kinds of interference. I had to host the big room. That was my role. It was MC. I was literally in the bathroom having a traumatic episode 10 minutes before I had to go out on the stage.
Were you vomiting?
I was shaking. I was almost having a seizure. I did not vomit, no.
Mm-hmm.
I had to pull myself together. And I sensed that there was electronics involved with this. There was all kinds of electronic interference that was going on there.
Was that what you were talking about? You did a show with Patty Greer and Laura Eisenhower talking about these conferences and the dangers it is to people. Is that one of the ones? That was
one of two. The other one was in Boulder, the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement in Boulder. That was another one that was fucked with heavily. Actually, they were supposed to do that conference at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and at the last minute, they canceled the contract. We wound up renting out an entire Best Western and all the grounds around it in order to have this conference. I was there to man the press room. And that was heavily fucked with. Heavily.
Were Greer and Eisenhower there? Greer must have been, because she's from Boulder.
She probably was. I don't think we knew each other then.
Do you know Laura personally?
No.
What's your take on her?
Laura's heavily used.
Yeah, she's a controlled asset.
Yeah, heavily used.
I had an interaction with her this year, and absolutely 100% she is worked. And she doesn't know it.
I exited out of an interview. Actually, I exited out of that interview early.
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew I was going to ask you that. That was one of the things I meant to ask you was you said, I have a business appointment that I have to attend to. And then Patty Greer says, as soon as you go offline, she says, well, at least we got him for a little while.
Yeah.
You don't say that unless you know. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Randy. Ugh. So you're not doing the conferences anymore, right?
Oh, no. No conferences. No. None at all.
They tried to, out of nowhere, again, this March, ESETI, the folks down in Trout Lake here in Washington, which is Gilliland's crew, contacted me because they had an herbalist conference last year, and I said, hey, can I attend? I don't have any money. I'll cook your food. I'll do whatever, scrub your toilets. Can I go to this conference? Because I needed some of the herbal mentorship on tincture making, specifically that. Never heard from them. And then this March, they contact me out of nowhere and say, can you come out to ESETI for a week and help prepare the ranch for guests? And I had already had a vision in like November of last year of me trying to go out there and trying to leave my husband, and then it goes bad at ESETI, and then I'm in the woods, and then there's a car crash, right? And I had already seen that in a dream sequence. And so when they asked me to come, I immediately said yes, yes, yes. And then I went, oh,
No.
oh, and I remembered, and I was like, they're trying to. So that was an attempt to access me. And I sent them 3 bags full instead. Baba Black Sheep, 3 bags full. And I sent them 3 of my handmade bags. If you want to see what those look like, they're on Project Avalon under a Brill Ryan thread called How Sewing Machines Work. Again, you have to work on code with this, right? So I wanted everyone to know that I was attempted to be called out. And then I had 2 of my little alien things that I've made. So I said no. And then the week I would have finished that was Gilliland went to Colorado and did a show, but I figured out that I have some parts. These were from the 20-year-old phase of my life when I was at UC San Diego, which has a lot of connection into the cognitive science stuff that was going on there, and then the existentialist nihilist philosophy that was happening there, specifically Derrida came to UCI that year, but there's also a Guy Debord and Baudrillard connection through San Francisco, but and Herbert Marcuse was at UCSD. So there's a Nazi group working out of UC San Diego that was involved in programming stuff, and then I was used at like Arthur Laffer's house called the Eyrie, and the Republican convention was there that year, and I like had weird stuff with Chuck Yeager recognizing me. Like I was like, what? And some other, Bill Clinton gave the commencement speech at the school that year. Okay, so big names. And I figured out that there was Nazi programming installed around that, specifically something called broken glass programming. And I only figured that out because they tried to re-access that in 2013. So then I realized in this year, in March, when all that went down, was on a trigger date for me. I won't say the date, but it's Hitler's birthday, which is a date used in a lot of stuff. And that was when the ESETI folk were calling me out. Now, ESETI, James Gilliland, Laura Eisenhower, and this person, Lisa Renee, who she had some musical for a while. All of those people, I think someone on Reddit of all things said, Lisa Renee, don't trust her, she's Mossad. And I was like, you know what? That's just absurd enough that no one would believe it unless it was actually true. And I actually think that that is what this is. I don't think those people know that that is who they are being worked by. I am fairly certain that that is who they are being worked by. And Laura Eisenhower, all of her Cosmic Gaia stuff is based off of the Lisa Renee stuff, which I needed to go down that road because I wouldn't have understood the Kabbalah stuff and how that aspect of this is like the 6 of 9 and understanding the programming of the dark side in order to take apart the wiring on that, or at least be able to decipher it when you're interfacing with it. But yeah, Laura doesn't understand she's being worked. I mean, but you can't fly all over this planet right now and do conferences without losing your shit if you're not still being worked and you're completely behind the amnesic wall of understanding that that is happening. Because, I mean, you and I could not go to an airport and get through the gate.
So I saw Laura. This is the only time I've had any contact with her. In Philadelphia in 2000, what was it? Maybe I was just looking at the poster here. I can't see it from where I'm at. But she did this talk at Free Your Mind conference. Mm-hmm. My son and I went together. I took him as kind of my shield.
Yeah.
And we just got up and left. It was so airy-fairy and lacking in content, and people were just gobbling it up. It was mumble jumbo. And there was probably a lot of code in it. I was dealing with being in that big of a crowd with that many people and being recognized. I was being recognized. And all of a sudden I'm thrown into this like pseudo-celebrity cycle, which I don't like. I like being able to travel incognito.
Yeah.
So that's the only contact I've had with her other than on that interview. And I got caged into that interview. I mean, that was an interview where Patty basically kind of trapped me into doing it.
Yeah, I mean, how you're going to navigate your very public face is going to be a tricky one for you to work out. And I would say your best model on that is Bob Dylan. You know, do you remember a few years ago, Bob Dylan was dressed in a trench coat and like a homeless guy, and he was running around after concerts doing stuff. God knows what Bob is doing these days, but I actually trust the guy in a weird way. And some young policewoman picked him up and had no idea who he was. So I would say your best model on how to play Houdini there is someone like that who's been able to do it pretty successfully. Look, you know, play your pink card, play your like crazy, batshit crazy. It's like they did it to pull you into the network, but you can play it as like getting them to leave. Getting the thems who don't know that they're being worked to leave you alone too. You know, that's where I looked like hell on the iconic thing, and I'm actually kind of glad I looked like that because it's so real, right? Like it was totally authentic. Like I am still blown out on some days, and I have a lot of work ahead of me and a long journey ahead of me still, and yet I don't need to worry about more than the step I am on right now. And so, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you about Laura and what I know is happening with the Lisa Renee, the James Gilliland, and the Laura connection. I don't know so much about Patty because I have purposely stepped away from her stuff because of the crop circles, and that's a little too intense for me. But those three have been all working with the earth energies and earth spirits, and yet they're also working with the negative ETs because the stuff that's happening on Mount Adams and Mount Rainier is all very negative ET based in terms of the weird sightings and the portals But there are nature spirits on the ground, and you have to work with them directly, and you have to be in the nitty gritty and the moss and the mud because they're not going to come out unless you are there with them. And they need to know that you know how to work with them. And that's where my particular skill set lies, because I was with the National Park Service. I was, law enforcement. I was all that. So I know that, cult aspect of it, but I also was just like lying in the dirt half the time. And that's where my nature connection is. And what I see Laura Eisenhower and Lisa Renee and Gilliland doing is I think that they are working for negative ETs. They don't know it. I think there's a Mossad connection. Gilliland's always talking about, the Navy SEALs this, and, he's such an egotistical, sexist weirdo that he doesn't realize he's giving himself away when he does an interview, but he's pretty easy to read. The Mossad connection, but they're also running negative elemental code into the earth grid that's trying to undo some of the organic flow and do like what you used to call a holographic insert into the positive aspects of the grid. And so that's why, again, I ended up having to interface. I've been to ESETI 3 times personally. And the funny thing is that the last time I was there, like, they didn't even know who I went the first day of their opening season. It poured rain. I had some weird stuff happen. I gave them some gifts, and they didn't even know I was there. So then they tried to get me to come back when they had me as a captive audience, so to speak. And I caught on, and I folded, but I still sent the I sent the gift of the 3 bags to arrive on April Fool's Day.
Nice. Nice.
So again, it's just play it funny, but yeah, there's the new age hijack is so real. And the thing with Lisa Renee that's so confusing is she has some really great information. And what I figured out with her is that what they're trying to do is give you all the cute clues. Here's what the negative is. Here's how you can get through. But then they'll still use all the cult stuff. Yeah, full disclosure. Everything out in the open, but they'll still use all the cult stuff. Oh, it's the 12 tree grid. It's the Kabbalah, but they were missing a point. So we added this extra point, and now it's in better alignment, and all the coding and cues she's doing, and they'll put it all out on the table and still get you to fall for the trap. And that's where the manufactured consent comes in, is that you knew it and you still bought it anyway, right? And so that's when last December, I stepped out of the, I was like, okay, I've graduated from the Lisa Renee energetic synthesis and I don't need this anymore. I needed it to know what I was facing, and I needed it to know to understand the Laura Eisenhower thing. And on Project Avalon, there was already a thread on Laura Eisenhower personalities in the alternative media, and I just shared the entire email exchange that I had with her, and how, I talked to her about my project's background, and I asked her for help with the I just contacted her. I left it open. She's like, well, do you want to book a session? And I was like, oh God, fine. Do you want to barter?
There's a trap.
Yeah. And I said, well, okay, do you want to barter for some of my handmade goods? Go on my website. Anything's fair game. I just ask for value trade, and I'll pay the shipping. No. So then she makes me sign up for PayPal again and send her money. And then she lost her laptop on the flight and she can't do a Zoom. And then it has to be a phone call. So now they have my phone number. Then she didn't have the information. I was asking about what's called the Demon Star Algol, which linked into.
I did a show on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I got to write that one down. I'm going to have to look that one up.
It's only on Patreon, but I can maybe send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, send me that one, because the Algol is highly linked into anytime the eugenics movement made a big advance, they always did it on a transit calendar with Algol.
They did that during COVID. Yeah,
right. And so I was trying to understand on my astrological chart where Algol fell and understand its role, because obviously I was used on that. And so that's what I was asking Laura about, and she didn't even know anything about that. She kept saying, oh, well, this is the asteroid. And there is an asteroid that's called Medusa.
Right.
So Algol is Medusa, but Algol is a Bahamian fixed star, which is a completely different situation that was used in antiquity. So if you understand how the cult has been pulling out this agenda for like 8,000 years, is where Richard Willett, who did my interview, has tracked it down to. So you got to look at really ancient.
It's far older than that. Yeah, but that's because we can only go back 8,000 years.
Is there a time wall there? Is that the wall in time?
Yeah, it's even akashically sealed off.
But the Akashic is just the program of the cult. You know that you can move beyond that, right?
Right. But it's not. It's redacted. It's redacted. The
trebuchet required to jump that.
Yeah, that's what I call the mind of God computer.
Yeah. When I went to that UFO cult in Port Orchard that I was telling you about, the lady there had a poster on the wall that was a charcoal drawing that her daughter had done when the mom kind of woke up and began this other trajectory of hers with the shop. And it was sort of along the lines of the Dolly paintings of the time dripping over the branches of the tree. But there was a skull in there. So we know the skull and bones thing and how they're using skulls right now. So I was like, okay, so this, just her telling me that and seeing that, and it was someone's real art that they were bringing through from the creative well, told me that there was a rip in time. Of course, in programming, they may have used this with you because you're so cued into the timing thing, is they used the book A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle in a lot of programming. And right now there's an art exhibit that's a traveling art exhibit where you can go inside a tesseract. And it's these, I think they're 6-sided things. So they're trying to get people to interface with art and the tesseract. That's another way they're trying to activate people. But any of those Newbery award-winning books with the picture of the horse, the little medal of the horse, or Caldecott, again, all of that is like, if you want to check how they were programming kids, check which books have those sigils on them, and you go right there. And then if you understand that might have been something you were interested in as a kid.
Fascinated. Absolutely fascinated by it.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to continue to track, and I'm throwing some of this stuff out there kind of rapid fire, just almost to like the parts of you that aren't struggling with the heavy lifting of the Denny Zone experiences you've had, and that are more once you moved through that into later in life. And, we're just kudos to you for staying online for so long, and the great shows you've done, and all the people that you were willing to like talk to from a point of neutrality. I mean, you've done so much incredible work, Randy, and I just really want to honor you for that. But I'm throwing out some of these things because I've been in the background working very hard to try and heal and work that side out, and then also stay as aware of what's happening in the larger field, and where I've been able to track some of these other things and just share some of those data points with you, because like I said, I already know that we jump out of this simulacra and this earth, and I already know we're on the other side. And so that's where I'm just trying to kind of interface with the organic flows and maybe your higher self, or like, yeah, just trying to interface with those parts of you, because I know you're hurting right now, but I think you'll be able to get through it. And hopefully I've shared a few breadcrumb gems to help you navigate.
You absolutely did, yeah. You absolutely did. Your tears throughout this. I'm just moved by it. I'm moved by the authenticity of the communication. I'm moved by your empathy and how much you pick up, even through a video screen. Yeah, I am struggling. And I'm going to have to struggle to do this, and I'm just going to have to power through it. And at the same time, continue to heal. So
instead of powering through, like, we've had to do that, but that's the forced thing. You know how when your mobile phone is about to not work anymore, it goes to low power mode?
Right.
Try this. Try going to as low power mode as you possibly can. And think about how, like in the Matrix movies, we were being used as a battery and the loosh. So how do batteries work? They're about polarities and stuff. So when I need to go into low power mode, I use salt extensively. I'll either soak in salt, different kinds, Epsom salt, the mineralized Dead Sea salts,
right. Sometimes
just Celtic sea salt. They've made that really hard to source right now, because that's the one I find. Because the Celtic, we both have that, and White Wolf had that too. So, and Duncan, the Celtic thing is very useful right now, and understanding that. And so I would just say, like, go to low power mode and power down the battery, and use the other nature elements of salt or salt water. I think that's part of why I was drawn to come live in front of this giant body of salt water that I can see from right out my window, even right now, is that like it works as a depolarizing agent in a really powerful way, and you can also send current through it too in a really powerful way. And so like instead of trying to power through, because that was what we were forced to do our whole lives, just go to low power mode, because that's where you can get off the radar to where you can do the harder work of, you know, rescuing the discards and rescuing the littles who are still think they're still in it and are in that vertical memory of like it never ended. And that's where they're powering up the matrix from. So when you're shaking and you're feeling the electricity, there's part of you that's still stuck in that past time loop, but it's a dead world. That's like the upside down. And so that's how they're able to still get the electrical flow from a human battery into the dead world. And so understanding that it really is working like the upside down, and that there is part of you that's still trapped in that other dimension. So that's where like the wrinkle in time and being trapped in other dimensions and dimensional flows and being able to navigate them in the present. So if I'm having that where I need to do a lot of depolarizing and I'm having a lot of the flashback, some bleed throughs, that's when I know I need to get stable enough to go interface with the outside world and then turn off the switches in the present to get. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
it's like
I'm tracking with you totally.
Yeah,
I got it.
So, but it's really
metaphors.
Hard. Yeah. Have you seen the Divergent film series, those 3 movies?
I've seen one, maybe 2 of them. I haven't seen the third one.
Yeah, the first 2 are really where it's at. Those are important to understand, and why they used those actresses. I've seen articles in like Rolling Stone, like Kristen Stewart with the vampire movies, Shailene Woodley with the Divergent film, and then there's one other actress who is doing like the trilogy stuff. You know, how they're using these young actresses to do that work. I mean, certainly Duncan did his best to expose what was happening to his relatives, Dakota Fanning and her little sister. You knew he was related. Mm-hmm. And how those girls have been, they were worked pretty heavily for a while, and now they're really off the radar with the movie stuff, which is, it's always scary when they do go off the radar, because then what's happening. But yeah, Duncan's in a bad way, but I think he'll need to work that for a while until he can get a hold of his trauma addiction links, and he's not really willing to do that piece of work for himself. And so until he does that, I mean, that's why the whole Sacramento thing got derailed, was because we had the first day you did the show, you know, the little update with the fun old school news music in the beginning, and then it was her birthday that weekend, and they got super drunk that night with the kid who they said was sort of their adopted son, and then Sierra Peterson, and they had like a birthday party for Miranda, and they got super drunk. And then that was the night when I had to go stay with Meg, because them sent some kind of mechanical being after us, and we heard it walking in the hallway, and then the front desk called us and said, you guys are being really loud in your room. And I had to get out of my room, and Meg let me go stay with her, and she was, you know, just trying to keep me calm and distracted by telling me like ordinary details about her own personal life so that I wasn't. But at one point something came walking down the hall, and it sounded like it had chains, and it was mechanical. I mean, it was like some kind of you know, like Saw Gerrera in the Rogue One movie, where he's like all just mechanical, or like you know, what is it, Schwarzenegger in the Terminator. Yeah. And my husband made the third Terminator movie, Terminator Salvation. My husband was a grip on that. He was the key grip on that. So again, all these weird cult connections that he has that I'm just like, oh my.
And that is going to conclude the part of the conversation that we had to share. My thanks to Artemesia, who is Annalie Cummings, for being so patient with me and gentle and kind, and also for sharing so much wisdom and her own vulnerability in the struggle. This is Off Planet Radio. I'm Randy Moggins. The truth is inside you. Peace out.
This is Off Planet Radio.